I'm just going to turn it on in case we say something funny.
I'm prepared.
Exactly. What are you making for dinner tonight, Jerry?
Parmesan. I haven't started drinking yet.
I just made mine. Lift both arms now, so
I haven't had a drink yet, so I'm not going to do it.
getting old, wear and tear.
Wow.
Parmesan.
You're ahead.
Well, let's kick it off.
Welcome to Career Crossroads Uncorked, a series of member chats inspired by good drinks and current talent acquisition trends. Your hosts, Chris Hoyt and Jerry Crispin, break down today's recruiting headlines while reviewing a select beverage of choice with industry leaders and influencers. Join us for a drink and conversation.
Well, welcome to another edition of Uncorked. I am Chris Hoyt with CXR. I've got Jerry Crispin on, of course. Jerry, say hello.
Hello.
And today's guest is Brett Coyne of Okta. Brett, how are you?
Good. How are you two doing? Good to see you.
Doing well. Feel good.
Fabulous.
Feel good. So before we jump in, talk a little bit about you and what you got on your mind. What was the drink of choice for today's Uncorked, Brett?
The drink of choice today is what's called a California Sidecar. Now, I didn't know what this was until I moved to the San Jose area, and there was a little restaurant up the street. And they had this drink on the menu, and I like whiskey, and it's a whiskey base, and it was one of the best drinks I've ever had. And so I try to make them, but boy, I can't make them like they can, but I do my best.
All right, good stuff. That's good stuff. Okay, so we're going to start making it. Right
Okay.
now, you've got a head start on us, so you can walk us through. You can walk us through your recipe, and then Jerry and I will try to recreate it on our end.
All right, sounds good. All right, so I'm going off memory here because I don't have my stuff in front of me, but I'd say maybe if do you have a mixer with you have ice and a shaker? Perfect. So I would do about 2, maybe 3 generous count of the whiskey. That's first, depending on what kind of Friday you're looking to have. And then you got 1 shot of Grand Marnier and 1 shot of why am I blanking?
No, that was it.
No, there's another one. It's the oh my gosh, I always throw a shot of, maybe I went off my own recipe script that the California Sidecar at the restaurant gave me. I always throw in a shot of Di Serono. I think that adds a good touch.
I don't have Di Serono because it wasn't on that list.
Well, that list was right on their website. So I must have added that myself. But yeah, then some orange bitters. And then if you really want to do it right, but this isn't easy to do, they always put like a brown sugar rim on there.
That's what I've got. I've got a brown sugar rim on a frozen
Perfect
martini.
Yeah,
How
that
much orange bitters?
I like a little extra just because it kind of takes the edge off, but whatever you're comfortable with. And then, what's really interesting when you go there, when they pour the Grand Marnier on at the end, they light it on fire and it just does a quick, and it's just a show, I think. Now, don't be doing that. Don't light anything on fire. And then they usually put a twist in there of like a lemon twist. I didn't do that today, but
All right, I got a little, this is my fancy lemon.
Yeah, shake it up really good. You want it really
A
cold.
lemon. I did a fresh lemon in mine.
All right, and then we're shaking it with ice.
Yeah, shake it real hard, get it nice and cold, and then strain it. I actually like it on the rocks, but I've had them the way Jerry has it is what they actually do in the restaurant, right in the martini glass. Yeah, if you're not a whiskey drinker, it can be a little strong. That's why, but I like it. I do like when I like it really cold.
Well, I bought a better whiskey so that it would be a little bit,
Yeah,
a little less strong.
All right, well, cheers, gentlemen.
all right.
That is delicious.
Yeah, it's really good with the sugar.
Oh man, that is good. And what is it called again? A what?
They call it a California Sidecar. I think it's their own spin on the old-fashioned Sidecar. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I didn't do the brown sugar rim. Feeling pretty lazy, but that's pretty delicious.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Good stuff. So,
Very nice.
So, Brett, what have you been up to? What's going on?
Oh, surviving. I mean, I think the thing is like I keep saying to people is life is back. I know it's not 100% back, but it's almost there. And so, I feel like for the past year, like company I work for has been growing like crazy. And so that's just a big part of the day and the weekends and, just whatever. But, you knew when Friday was over, it's pretty easy. There wasn't much going on. And I kind of got used to it. And I frankly enjoyed it. I enjoyed like no expectations. I mean, not that it was a good situation for the kids or, but now everything's back. I mean, school was back this spring. Weekends are busy with activities, flag football and basketball and cheerleading, and friends can fortunately get together again if they choose to. outdoor dining, indoor dining in some places. And so it's kind of the question is, what have you been up to? Like everything all of a sudden is really what I'm feeling. Yeah.
Playing catch up for all the activities.
Yeah, there's been all this pent up demand and everyone wants to do things. I think my wife and I were looking the other day. I mean, the whole summer, she said to me, because I don't get involved, I just thought, tell me where to be, right? I think there's only 2 weekends where either people aren't visiting or we're not going somewhere.
Oh,
So
man.
good. Yeah, it's busy.
This is the first time I went to get a haircut. It's one of the first times I've gotten a haircut as things are starting to sort of cool off. And the sign out front didn't say mask mandatory. It said mask recommended.
Oh,
A little bit of a change in the right direction.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. It is nice getting a haircut. I went about 6 months and it was like kind of the Seinfeld episode where they kind of tried to see how far they could go on an empty tank of gas. The gas light came on. He's like, I'm going, keep going. They kept passing it. Every time I thought I was going to get a haircut, I'm like, one more week. And I mean, I hadn't had my hair that long.
I've discovered
college.
how to get my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. How about for work? I mean, you guys I would assume you're like everybody else. Things are on fire.
On fire.
Going a little crazy, trying to retain employees while attracting new ones. Same challenges everybody else is having.
Yeah, I think so. And, I belong to a pretty good tight knit group of TA leaders here in California, and we talk a lot. And everyone, it's so ironic how everyone has the exact same situation playing out.
Yeah,
everyone. It is exactly that. And I read something the other day that said some survey was put out. So it was either 40 or 45% of all people are going to make a move in the next year just because, because they couldn't, right? Which I don't understand because at least in the tech industry, we haven't had any problem like hiring through COVID. So, but I guess just a broader, I know maybe tech didn't get hit as hard, but 45% of all people, imagine if that really plays out, are just going to make a move in the next 12 months.
Oh, yeah. Well, we saw some survey not too long ago, just a few weeks ago, where it said healthcare professionals, 80%, I think, in the 80 percentile of nurses said that they were either going to quit altogether as before the end of the year, or they were willing to change jobs for as little as $1 more an hour. Like that's just how frustrated or tired or in need of something different they were.
Well, I never thought that this would be a big business, but I think it could be now is if you started a recruiting agency to hire for restaurants. Restaurants can't staff. They can't staff for the first time ever, right? They were so dependent on a certain group of people, either people who were in that business because they loved it for life, or people who were between jobs or college or, and I read something else that said there was a large percentage of people, and they gave all these specific examples, people who actually gave quotes to the article. It said, hey, I was dependent on this industry for 15 years. It went away for so long. I actually had to go get trained to do something else. So they're never coming back. So that proportion of the workforce that were bartenders, servers, hostesses, restaurant managers, they're just not coming back because they had to go out of necessity, find something else. And now the restaurant industry is saying, we don't have enough people. So they got a big recruiting challenge.
Yeah. Well, what a tough place to be in when you have given all of this time and all of this energy to an industry that all of a sudden made you feel incredibly dispensable.
Yeah.
You're just out.
Yeah, I did it for 4 years, so I'm empathetic. I mean, I've washed dishes and waited tables and bartended, and it's
every recruiting person did some sort of hospitality or food services.
Something like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was on a meeting earlier this week with actually the Sherm State Council, and the entire area in South Jersey and at the Jersey Shore is going nuts because they cannot find workers willing to come back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a lot of it is exactly that. They learned how to get into something else that's going to give them a little bit better money.
Yeah.
Or they're just upset because, they've been furloughed. They lost a lot. They're underwater. They're getting some money from unemployment, at least for a while. And they need the time to have the second or third gig where they can get the money under the table or whatever, so they can get back to even.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about a primarily tip dependent, right, type of work and we just had a call not too long ago. We were talking about this, where they are making more money right now with the assistance and unemployment than they would if they went back to work and had to put their kids back in some sort of daycare or had to manage, all of the other things that have to get taken care of when they're actually in the workplace. And so now they're just kind of biding the time, some of them, until the restaurants get, really ramped up, maybe tips come back to some degree, and the work picks back up. And I don't have any idea when that might be.
Crazy. But even in, so Brett, in terms of, you said the ability for Okta to find and attract folks still is pretty strong. A lot of others, your peers in a lot of other parts of Silicon Valley, are saying it's the toughest time they have finding IT in their lifetime.
I don't agree that it's not as competitive as ever. I think I'm in a good place, right? So, I mean, every day the federal government comes out and talks about all these hackings.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is at the top of everybody's mind. Identity, which is the real core of Okta's product, is really at the forefront of security. It's not just, can you put a perimeter around your employees? It's like, who the heck's logging in, right? So yeah, it's just, and we've also taken advantage of some things. I was just talking to somebody, I was interviewing somebody today for a role on my team, and I was asking them about their company's position on getting back to work and what that looks like. And I think in the past week, Amazon's come out and said, hey, it looks like some of these companies are just designing things that I think they're going to change in 6 months. Like, well, you have to come in 3 days a week, and then 4 weeks a year, you can work from anywhere else. I mean, we're just making it up. Some other companies come out and said 2 days a week, you have to be there. And then there's a lot of talk of they're going to see an employee exodus because people are so used to having their freedom and their choice and flexibility. And Okta came out, I give the company credit. They came out a long time ago and said it's about employee choice first, and we'll build workplace and reinvest to support that. And it's aligns with the company's mission, which is enable any company to use any technology, right? It's the integration hub of, I can log in one time and use 10,000 different applications. So if that's the case, why can't you work from anywhere, right?
Well,
yeah.
But there's also an interesting, we had this talk this morning with the topic came up too. And there is a theory also that organizations have so much more flexibility and a little more transparency when they don't have this insane investment in a physical footprint, right? From a property standpoint, right? You got a building or two, that's one thing. It's easier to let people work remote. You have a campus. You have a very different investment in using the real estate. Or if you are so big, like one or two companies where the city's infrastructure gets upgraded around you, right? Because of what you contribute to that from a footprint standpoint, a lot of people are sort of conspiring that the C-suite is saying, you've got to come back to work because it's good for our culture, or you've got to come back to work, right? Because you're missing productivity, when that's maybe not really the case. That's not really why they need them to come back.
As somebody told me recently, the real estate investment trusts are very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true, but I am convinced that having been given a taste, for a lot of people, having been given a taste for being accountable for whether you come in or don't come in and that kind of stuff, I'm convinced that that's an addictive piece to employees for the future, and that they want to have the option of being able to determine where they work and are more than willing to be held accountable for the results of work.
Yep.
But it's their ability to negotiate or engage with their manager. Hey, this is what I need to do in order to, deal with my life right now. And everybody is in a different kind of position. And I think we need to upskill managers to be able to help employees make good decisions that affect their lives as well as the performance of the company. So it's a balance. It's not as easy as in the past where you have to come in 9 to 5, and maybe if you need some help, we'll give you permission to go away for a while. But now it's my job as an employee to figure out what's best for me and to work with my manager to help accommodate that so that we get the job done.
So Brett, you're pretty dialed in the Valley. Been there a little while. You know a lot of folks. Without naming names, unless you want to name names, have you seen somebody do it like starting to come out of this and is positioned really, really well, or is a train wreck? Do you have do you have an example of what's going on where you feel like, oh my God, that is the worst way I would have done it, or oh man, we could model something after this?
Do you mean the philosophy around like how they're modeling?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Versus the remote.
Yeah.
Come back.
And while you think about that, I want to tell you that the brown sugar on the rim is really cool.
Right. It makes a whole difference. It really does. Always got to go back to the drink, right? So I will tell you, like, what I was kind of saying prior was that I do, like, one of the reasons I think we've been successful is that we have shifted the mindset. You know, when I first got here a couple of years ago, we had to basically hire primarily in all these locations where there were offices. And what we were doing is we're just competing against all the other big tech names because everybody's in Toronto and Seattle and the Bay Area, right? And so on and so forth. Now, there's enterprise or there's go-to-market roles that are territory-based, right? But again, everybody's hiring a sales rep in Detroit and Phoenix and London and Paris, right? But for all the non-territory-based roles, we've now been given the freedom to not hire anywhere. You have to have an entity, you have to have taxation, you have to, right? But, you know, we're suddenly hiring in all 50 states. We're doing a lot of hiring in Canada, and it's opened up our total addressable market. And we can go build a brand, and we can, you know, hire in locations that we couldn't before, which is, I think, really helping us maintain our level of hiring in what's an incredibly competitive market. So I don't want to discount the fact that it is incredibly competitive. I don't want to discount the fact that we have our own challenges, right? But I haven't seen it hit the top of the funnel yet. At 90-10 rule, 80-20, right? There's always roles you're like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough candidates. But for the most part, our hiring numbers have been taken up 3-4 consecutive quarters, and we've been able to maintain it. Now, who knows in 2 quarters if everything starts to get tighter, right? That could be happening, and I think that will happen. But the other thing that's been fascinating is all of our key recruiting KPIs have trended in a positive direction over the past year. So going to virtual interviews, 100% remote work, our offer accept rate's up, our speed is down, our interview to hire ratio stayed the same. So no difference in efficiency. Our candidate experience has gone up big time.
Yeah.
And our hiring manager survey scores have gone up.
Right.
So I don't know if
I hope you're going to compete with the Candidate Experience Awards.
So we do need to get involved. We had I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Talent board.
Kevin.
Talent board.
Yeah.
I'm gonna feed Kevin Grossman.
So Kevin came and spoke with my team last year.
Then you owe him.
I know.
You need to participate.
Well, when we all ran into each other at the Smart Recruiters Conference right before things shut down, I talked to Kevin and I said, look, you know, Okta's not there yet, but we need to get them there. So why don't you come talk to my team? So they realize there's a whole, you know, governing body out there and a whole, right. And so after that, we put a ton of work into it because we were measuring it through our ATS survey. And we were in the negative in a lot of areas. And in 12 months, by number of things we did and implemented quickly, we got it to a plus 24. And this year we're trending to a plus. Right now we're running at a plus 36 year to date. So just incredible, incredible swing.
You need to test that against that, because I'll tell you, the advantage is getting on that list of the top 50 is a pretty good deal. And if you're at 36 NPS score and you're doing it similar to what we do, that would be well within the range.
Yeah. Well, and you know what the best part is our offer accept rate. Like we talked to the team about, as you take candidate experience up, your offer accept rate goes up. Our offer accept rate in Q1 of last fiscal year, right? So basically, February to April, it just passed, was our Q1 of this year. Prior year, our offer accept rate aggregate was 70%. This past Q1 was 86%. So as NPS went from like a flat to negative, basically, because some teams were a little above zero, most teams are below. As we took that up into the positive, our offer accept rate followed it, which was just a really cool experiment.
And you are addressing not only those that you hire or those who reach the final 4 or 5, but really everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important for people to notice, because a lot of people tell me they've got, we have NPS scores of 90. And I'm going, who are you surveying? Obviously the ones that we hire.
No, we survey everybody. We survey everybody. What I want to start surveying now is internal employees, because their experience is not as good. So I want we're going to try to fix that this year and then survey them. But Chris, I don't know how we got sidetracked. You asked a question about who does it well. Like, I know this is like off the drinking the company, but I think we do it incredibly well. Like, our head of workplace is very innovative. He came from LinkedIn. He's been talking about this dynamic work for 4 years. And I think we're there. And when you said like who maybe isn't, I don't know yet because we're not back. But what I'm starting to see and hear is it does feel like some of the big companies with really large real estate footprints, I really think they're going to miss out on this. Where like, so we have 14 floors in a high rise in San Francisco, directly across from Salesforce. I can't imagine it's cheap rent.
Right.
But the mindset was, hey, it's not like we're going to go and double the amount of floors. We're going to continue to grow our Silicon Valley employee base.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not going to double the amount of floors. Maybe we're not going to grow them at all, but we're going to rework the office space to work for people who choose to come in sometimes. And what I'm excited about this whole thing is, I think you brought up a great point about it puts a lot of burden, not burden, that's the wrong word. It's going to challenge managers of the future to think differently.
Right.
And what's important to the employee. But companies, what is like our head of workplace said, like, well, we have a demand problem getting people back to the office. And then it's like, well, what are you going to do to get them back? Right. And so I think things are going to change around the value proposition of employees and contractors. If you want them to get, some people just want to get back. Like personally, I want to go 2 days. I want to go 2 days a week. I miss it.
Sure.
But I don't want anybody to tell me I have to be there 5.
Right.
I think that's the biggest change.
Right. If they told you had to do it 4 days, you'd go, I don't think that's the right decision. I want to be able to make the decision.
Yeah. Well, and the hard thing with that is it's usually what I'm hoping doesn't happen is sometimes the big, we all know who these big companies are in tech. They usually set the path for everyone else. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I think these other.
You're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Brett. I talked to 2 and they said point blank off the record, they don't want to be the first ones to say, here's what we're doing. They want to very quietly roll out some informal, hybrid environments, telling people we're evaluating as we go. They do not want to be the trendsetters for this.
Because where it's real challenging is compensation.
Right.
We have I think one of the fun parts being you knew where I worked prior, pretty big company. You can just move faster and do things in a smaller company. We're almost 4,000 people now, but agility is a mindset, right? And some companies have it, some don't. We've rethought our compensation approach already 2 or 3 times just in the past 12, 15 months, because what you think is the right way to go when some of the big companies aren't setting the course and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. If you don't do it, you can't compete with us, is you have to be nimble and flexible. And the big debate now is, do you comp, I'll just use the US because it's too hard to talk about this on a global scale right now, but in the US, do you comp everybody Silicon Valley wages regardless of where they live? Or do you tier it and you pay local labor? But then some companies are saying, well, if you already work for us in an expensive market and you choose to move, we will keep your comp the same. But then I think where you run into challenges is you're going to hire the same type of skill and level and profile in the same market and have a big disparity. So,
but don't forget too, they're getting capped on the increase. Their merit increases get capped. The bonus, their comp sort of shifts a little bit, right? Because they're going to be at the top of a band in another market, and they're trying to figure out how they sort of jigger that.
It's obviously a nuanced and complex set of questions, but I think the philosophy of how you approach compensation ought to be that the job has a real value to the corporations, any corporation, regardless of where the person is located. That value might be X, whatever X is, and how you determine that is going to be the challenge. But then you need to be able to decide that you could put a temporary subsidy on X for those that are required to be in Silicon Valley. And you could, and on that basis, though, at the minimum, anyone in the world would be able to at least get X. Now that gives some people in some very low cost areas of the world more possible wealth than they would have obtained otherwise because of a local price value that where they might have taken that job. But honestly, the kind of fairness and attractiveness that will demonstrate to people on a global basis will attract the very best and brightest in the world. you will have no problem from a competition point of view. And if you did give them the lowest possible value they would accept, who gets the margin? Who gets the profit from that? Well, you know what? It's it's the CEO of a corporation whose bonus is improved because on the backs of the people that he's taking the money from.
Or she.
Absolutely. Or they. But the value add is that a company that demonstrates that they're willing to pay workers on a global basis a fair market value for the value of the job first, and then adjust based on that, I think will be a winner in the future.
Yeah. There will be the tech giants that drive how slow or how fast I think that gets adopted, because a lot of people are looking to them.
Yeah. Right? Well, and I think like even companies like Radford have to completely rethink this, right? Because when you're in a role like we've all held, the challenge is like I agree with everything you're saying. And it's like you can philosophically try to figure out innovative ways to differentiate and win in all markets. But then you have to take that to the finance team. And then you have to get the total rewards team, right, who wants to benchmark against Radford, and then finance has to decide if we can afford to do it that way, right? And if we're going to like, it's a Netflix model, right? Pay top of market for everybody, no matter where they are. But in a world where, let's say my company, they're saying work from anywhere, employee choice. The value, I'll use recruiters. The value of a good recruiter doesn't change for me whether they're living in St. Louis or New York or Seattle or Dallas. Like,
not it.
Right. But what tradition says is, well, if you're in Dallas, you're going to get, 20% haircut, right? Or whatever the difference is between, tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 markets. And I don't know yet if I've decided what I agree with. Like, I think it's TBD, and that the Aons and the Radfords, they got to rethink all this and help us figure out what the new benchmark is, because the benchmark isn't going to, I don't think it's going to work.
I think there will be some rock stars that rise up and say they don't care, but we'll see if they can maintain that momentum. It's expensive. It's really expensive.
It is expensive. No, it's not, because that money goes to someone. It doesn't necessarily go to the individual who, you're not paying the top dollar for, but it's going to go to somebody at a higher level who's now making millions, and he's making 800, he or she is making 800 or 900 times what the lower level person is. Let's, corporations that do what I say are going to succeed.
Let me ask you a question, right? So labor is the highest cost in any company. So if you choose to adopt that, does it mean that the money is going to go to other people, or is now money not able to be fueled in the programs and marketing and product and all, So I think that's the balance I would ask, is that's the highest cost, right?
Yeah, you're right. Where does the money go?
Where does the money go? So it's, if everybody gets, like, let's say everybody gets New York and San Francisco wages worldwide. Yeah, you would have 199.85% off separate.
But the price of that job isn't New York or San Francisco. It's a little bit less than that. And if you're in San Francisco because we need you there, you get a subsidy for that.
Got it. Yeah.
That's a difference. But the value of that company or value of that job could then be publicized, but that there's an adjustment based on a variety of factors. Talk to us. I'm convinced that if you give me a fair wage, and I know it's a fair wage, that everybody that has to do with the value of that job, and I decide to go to Portugal for the next year, because it's really cool from my perspective to live there and work on a team, I feel I'm making a significant investment in my learning. I'm making a significant investment in the opportunity to gain a little bit of wealth. And I would be dying to work for your company.
Yeah.
And I think you get the best and brightest that way.
Well, so best and brightest. Brett, I want to circle back. You said performance of your team and the experience your recruiters are delivering is through the roof right now. It's accelerated. They're rock stars. They're killing it. Do you think that that is in part due to what some are calling the Stanley Cup of recruiting that you have created?
So that I'm glad you picked up on that. So yeah, look, I've been very surprised at what happens. I mean, look, you're only as good as your team. And when we went into COVID, who knew how candidates were going to respond? I think people are just so adaptable, period. Right. And this is just another time where everybody adapted. But I am very surprised by, how all of our KPIs improved. I just am. To be honest, we've done a lot of great work, but some of it I think is just luck, right? I really do. And, if you do it just a little better than everybody else, there's a lot of bad interview experiences. People say you're doing great, but I do think some of what we do is very intentional. What I mean by that is you mentioned the Stanley Cup, and that is exactly where the idea came from that I can't take credit for. A manager on our team named Lauren Hanley did, and I thought it was one of the greatest ideas ever. We were talking about recognition. Every year the Glint survey goes out. No matter what you do, the score for recognition never tends to be as high as you want it to be. And so we focused on, hey, we got to have a lot of fun, especially, during COVID and everyone's at home. You can't interact. If people want to go in the office or not, who knows? But so we put a bunch of managers on a project and said, go come up with some things. We do an annual recruiting kickoff, and it is like a really fun day. We set our priorities for the year. We give about 40% of the team awards from the prior year. We do peer-to-peer recognition, leadership awards, KPI awards. It's a great fun. It's my favorite day of the year. But we thought so we have that. Then you have your annual performance cycle, merit, bonus, equity. What can we do to keep this thing going all year round, right? So we do a lot of little stuff that adds up, but we said we need something at least on a quarterly basis. I think I really do believe this has something to do with it. So, do you want me to share what the cup is?
Yeah, I think you should. So for those who have not seen this on LinkedIn or have not heard from any of your team members yet, as we have, maybe give them sort of an overview of what this is.
Yeah. So we have about 8 things that defined our culture, and one is we succeed as individuals but win as a team. The most important thing is to win as a team, because whether you fill 3 recs and Jerry fills 20 and I fill none, but the business needed 23, they're happy. They don't care who filled them, and neither the candidates. So how do we get everybody working together towards the common goal? And, sometimes recruiters are like, my rec, my candidate, and that doesn't help. And so what we decided was we needed something to really try to rally teams around common goals. And it's okay to have individual awards, but how do we reward a team? And the idea was every quarter, managers can nominate their team. And, the things that we look at are, did your team meet their quarterly numbers? Is your offer accept rate going up? How's your everything? We all these KPIs. But the fun part about this is KPIs don't tell the whole story. Nope. Some teams overcame huge obstacles, dealt with leader change, had a bad quarter and came roaring back. They missed their number by a little bit, but it was taken up 30%, right? And so the effort was valiant. So it's a little bit of art and science, but if you're a manager at the end of the quarter and you decide your team should be nominated, you write up a nomination and you talk about all the reasons your team should win. And then you submit it, and all the other managers get to read through them, and then they vote in an anonymous survey. And so not every manager puts their team up. Sometimes they just know we don't deserve it this quarter, right? But the first one we ever did was last quarter. And so, the team that won was our team in EMEA. But the idea is, just like the Stanley Cup, is when you win, we have this huge trophy that has a cup at the top. And on the plaque, it says, recruiting team award, outstanding team achievement for the quarter. And what we do is when the winning team is announced, we take the cup and we actually ship it to the manager's home. And they get to keep it for the quarter. Now they can ship it to all their employees, and everybody gets to touch it whenever they want to do. Because that's the lure of the Stanley Cup, right? It goes to everybody's houses, and hopefully somebody puts maybe a beer in there and drinks out of it, I hope. But the whole point is it's about having fun and getting teams really focused on winning as a team. But then also, there's an opportunity to win something really cool. It's bragging rights, but you actually get this massive cup. And so Lauren shipped it from Palm Springs, where she lives, to London. And it showed up last week, and our leader in EMEA, or maybe it was Monday, posted it on LinkedIn. oh my gosh, the comments. And so I know it's working, but I'd love to take credit for that idea. It was not mine. It was Lauren's. And I think it's one of the best I've ever seen.
I love the idea, but there's a couple things that I observed. One is, Brett, this wouldn't happen unless you listen to people who are in your group. You obviously are having a lot of fun with what you're doing, innovating and kind of having the back of your people who have ideas. And that's powerful. You have the advantage of an extraordinary type of company that does something that's very hot.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it makes it easier for me as a recruiter working in your company to engage at least a little bit of attention to people who have those kinds of skills, because they get that you are doing something special. But you still have to have an environment that attracts them.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that, it's only the part of that engages me about your skills, knowledge, and experience, because you're doing the things that I want to aspire to do well. You also have to have a place that's going to nurture me, engage me, and reward me. And it starts with, obviously, your people. In recruiting, they have to believe that that's true as well. And you made a point about, getting involved in defining the culture of recruiting that you want to be part of. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was really fascinating to me. That's one of the things that you mentioned you wanted to talk about. I'd like you to expound on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I do think that is a powerful, upskilling of managers who are able to listen well and then execute around their teams to be able to create the kind of environment that they can work in.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate all that for sure. Like I'm very lucky. Like you don't know what you're getting into when you make a move. And the last company I was working for was a phenomenal company. Everybody knows that. Okta was a 1,500, 1,600 employee company growing like crazy. And I grabbed on and I'm on for the ride. But first and foremost, they believe in recruiting and the importance, and we get invested in. So you can't ask for much more when you're in a role like we've all been in, because that's not always the case. So, and then the second thing is like my boss, she lets me do what I need to do to create that environment. And I think we spend so much time at work. You better have fun. If it's just about hitting numbers, like that's only going to get you so far. But yeah, so we, I think creating a culture, when it's done very intentionally and everyone has a voice, I think that can lead to great things. And so, yeah, the Recruiting Cup, Chris, that is one example of, I think that was bred from a team that's very focused on how do we just create the best environment possible? And I'm sure people on my team, some of them don't think it's the best environment they've ever worked for, right? There's always some, but we've had incredibly low attrition. I think my first full 2 years, we had 2 voluntary resignations, 2.
Wow. And
our team went from 27 to 87. So that makes you feel good. Like, okay, we're getting a lot of things right. It's never perfect, right? But we did this exercise because we knew we were going to hire a ton of recruiters. And so got the management team together and we said, hey, Okta has its culture. The values guide the culture of the company. Every company has a culture and people can get a feel for that. They can read about it. But when someone says, what's it like to work in recruiting? What do we say? And we got like 12 different answers. Right? Of course you did, because we haven't spent any time figuring out what does it mean to us. So at our offsite last fall, we actually pulled the team together. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the Miro board, MIRO. So a Miro board is like an online place to go do brainstorming, and it's like virtual sticky notes. And the last company I worked for was had a really big focus on product mindset and design thinking. So I got to fortunately go through a lot of training on that. By no means am I a leader in design thinking, but you can take the core principles and apply them to an exercise and get a good outcome. So said to the team, let's spend an hour on this. And so we got in the Miro board and we said, what are all the traits and characteristics that you would want people who might join our team in the future? to think about our team to make it exciting for them to join here. And I think what was like basically we're trying to get to a place where Jerry wants to come take a sourcing role for Okta. And he asked 4 different people on the interview team, tell me what it's like to work there. Would we all say the same things? Not that we all should say the same things, but do we all feel the same way? Are we excited to be here, right? So we started capturing all these words. And then what you can do is you group them together. 20 people said excited, 10 people said, we want to have fun, 5 people said we want to execute. We came up with, and we narrowed it down to like the top 7 or 8. And then we said, everybody feel good about this. And we said, yeah, these are the 7, 8, 9 things that like we think people would want to join a team that operated like this. And then the question I asked is, but is this a place that you all want to work based on that? And we actually went back to the drawing board and we moved some things around again. And so it went from an exercise of how do we want to be perceived by partners and stakeholders or potential prospects to what's the kind of place we actually want to work in? And we have the opportunity to control this. So what are we doing? Right. And so I thought the really interesting surprise from this is we went from thinking about how we wanted people to see us to how we wanted to see ourselves. And if we have the opportunity here to create whatever we want, how do we want to define that for us? And it became this exercise where we rolled out, and I have it in my hand. We actually created the Okta recruiting culture, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that we say that if you're going to work here, or you do work here, or you work with us, this is what we strive to be. And it's become a really awesome tool. It's pretty new, about 6 months in, but for coaching employees. We share it externally with prospects. Hey, if you're going to come work on this team, like, hey, what's it like to work here? This is what you can expect. This is the culture.
Do we have a copy of that sucker?
I can send it to you for sure. Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I'll send it over. But it's been really fun because the biggest thing is we use it to hold each other accountable. Right. And so it morphs from something we thought we set it out to be to something that it is. And now when people say, what's it like to work here? We can say, well, here's what it's like to work here. If this isn't the type of environment,
this is a master class on something. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So the new teams that come in, the new folks that get to come in, obviously they're walking right into that. They get a card as part of their pre-boarding, onboarding, saying this is it. This is who we are.
But it also puts them on notice. If you're looking here to skate, this is not going to work for you.
Yeah, and I'd say it's less about that, right? If you're not going to perform, you're not going to perform anywhere. But it's more about just like, how do we want to behave and act and treat each other? And yeah, and not everybody wants this, and that's okay. But if you know up front, then just opt out in the interview process, right?
I like that.
But it's a pretty, look, like I said, nothing's perfect, but this has been a really fun thing. And it's gotten us to a place of, I think it has bred a lot of these ideas because, the whole we succeed as individuals and win as a team, that was probably the baseline for creating the cup.
Well, I love it. Not only do I love it, Brett, but I think it's better than you think it is. I think it forces a couple things to happen. One is it does give some people the ability to say, this is not my place. I really am looking for a wholly different kind of recruiting experience. But for those who believe that it is, it also puts the pressure on you for backing them on those principles.
100%.
And that's something you bought into, that these are the 8 things that I will have your back on. And that's powerful.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
That is a very big deal for a lot of people who want to, make a difference.
Agreed.
And I'm convinced that if you can build that, I think you really are in a great position. You've obviously had a great opportunity to take what you've learned in the past and begin to seriously apply and execute that in the areas that you're in now. And I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. We've been doing this a long time, right? Maybe 25 years for me.
Yep.
And there's so much more. I think too many teams or companies or leaders, they don't focus on this aspect of the team. And it's just about the numbers. And yes, it's always about the numbers, right? If we don't hit the numbers, I'm going to hear about it. Don't get, trust me. So, but how do you build an infrastructure and team and to get to the numbers, but also, the mindset and the behavior and the culture.
Have a conversation about the way that the path that we got there.
Yes.
And I think you built a really interesting set of possibilities there that I hope you're keeping a journal.
I think it's all here right now. There's no time to write anything down.
I got to tell you, keep a journal. You've already told me that you got a frickin' book in what you got to do. And at some point, you're going to be too old to do this shit. So you need to think about that kind of stuff downstream.
Yeah, the culture piece is, and I think it's okay. Some people say, "Hey, you can't have a sub." I think that's, you got it. Subcultures happen everywhere, but how many people are intentional about them? And we started with the Okta culture. Here's the Okta culture, the values. Now, how do we work within this framework? Because you don't want to go rogue, right? Like, you still have to fit within the company, but everything we do ladders up to those values. And it all, look, it's early. So we'll see in a year from now, if, hopefully we can keep this thing going. But we do a biweekly all hands, and I took the opportunity in that all hands on Wednesday to mention 2 of our Okta recruiting culture characters. Because I said, hey, we win as succeed as individuals, but we got to win as we're a little behind in the quarter. So try to rally the team. But hey, you got to look to the left, look to the right, pick up your teammate, right? We got to get there. And I forget the other one I used. I think we always assume good intent, because there's been, when the pressure gets on, people tend to start doing this a little bit, right? And they said, hey, just take temperature down. Like, it's okay. We're going to get there, but it's not going to be easy. Don't start turning on each other, right? It's help each other out.
I think that's great. So you've obviously made the transition from Intuit to Okta, and you're fully in charge of a really interesting set of approaches that are working for Okta right now. You asked the question about internal mobility as one of the areas that you're getting involved in. I will tell you that that is one of the hottest areas going on right now, in part because internal mobility goes beyond TA and focuses in on the combination of TA and what you do for the building of people. Is your company focused in on those issues, or how we move people internally?
So I would say not yet. It caught us quickly. I will tell you this, I saw it coming, right? But I also think as companies grow and evolve, you have to introduce the right things at the right time. So internal mobility, a big program 2 years ago, I would have felt, we don't need it. But what I saw is organically last fiscal year, 18% of our recs got filled with internals. Now, about half of that was promotions, and that's a whole nother conversation. Why are we using recs for promotions, right? But net, there's a higher percentage of people just organically saying, I've been here 3 years, I want to do something different. And we don't want them to leave. If we can give them an opportunity here, we should, right? So we're just embarking on that, and we put a cross-functional team together. And however I would describe it, like, my boss knows it's important. She knows we're going to put a cross-functional team. She said it's not just TA. And we're going to go out and benchmark. We're going to do empathy sessions with employees who went through, hear their experience. We're going to talk to managers who lost or gained in their experience. We're going to get all this in one place. And then we're going to come up with something that, we hope works for Okta for the next 12 to 18 months and roll it out. And I think it's going to be well received. So, has it made it up to the CEO that he knows we're on this? Probably not yet. But, when we get, hey, we're doing this, great. Come back when you have it 80% baked, right? We want to go and maybe come back in 3 or 4 months and say, here's all the work we did. Here's all the learnings. Here's our recommendation. All right. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, and we might fix it in 12 months, but I think the employees right now, I'm looking forward to maybe September, October, if I can roll this out to the company all hands. I think a lot of employees are going to go, it's about time.
Yeah.
So, and it's something that touches everyone. It touches everyone.
It does. And obviously from a talent acquisition point of view, if somebody leaves, that hiring manager or that manager of that person would regret, like, it's a loss to the company that person left us, then each of those becomes a set of issues that makes it more difficult for the hiring, talent acquisition, to be able to replace them. So the extent to which employees can look at and see the opportunities for internal movement and or promotion over time has an enormous impact on talent acquisition long term. So I'm absolutely convinced that a proactive, buy, build kind of strategy is critical for corporations.
Yeah,
and if you can contribute to that, I think it's really outstanding. So I'm leading a set of judges to look at that this fall, or this summer. And hopefully we'll see some case studies of companies that are doing some really interesting things with the idea that we can share them publicly to everyone.
Yeah.
And so I know this is an important issue for you. And what I hope is that we can figure out ways that we can find our members who are doing really good things that can share case studies, as well as bringing in other ideas that come from outside.
Yeah, it feels like an area that needs a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
But what I'm hoping is we're getting big fast. We just made a pretty big acquisition, and we're going to be 5,000 people. I mean, 2 years ago it was 1,600 people when I got here. We were 5,000 in January.
Crazy.
But now's the time to do it. When you get 10, 15, it's just so hard to roll out programs. So we'll see where it goes. But I'm excited about. I also think this whole idea of virtual, non-virtual is going to play into internal mobility. And there's going to be biases, and so I think it needs a lot of innovation, but we'll see where it goes.
You are in the sweet spot for everything everybody's going through right now. Brett, thank you so much for the drinks. I had a refill. I think Jerry had a refill. I wasn't watching you too closely. I was watching my own glass, but I appreciate it, and I really like catching up with you. It's good. I can't wait to see you in person. I miss it.
Well, we can make that happen. I think we're both in the Bay Area now, so we should talk.
I'm not in the Bay Area anymore.
Oh, I am behind on all the news.
He's now in Austin.
I'm behind on all the news.
I've gone from Silicon Valley to Silicon Hills, so I'll be in Austin now.
I think the last time we talked, you were in San Jose, so that was a while ago.
Only as of a week ago. I literally just got here Sunday.
Oh my goodness! Wow, you have to fill me in. I don't know what's going on.
We'll make it happen. Brett, thanks so much, man. Yeah. You're awesome.
Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Career Crossroads Uncorked. Chris Hoyt and Jerry Crispin look forward to sharing more drinks and conversation with you next time. Until then, cheers.